Hi, John.
Hi,
Welcome to the Fairly Current Show.
I'm glad to be here.
Okay. First off, what are your thoughts about this being Merdeka month? What are your thoughts about something like One Malaysia?
Well, first of all, I heard today that the government is now wanting to remove race from a lot of identification forms. But in that same statement, they said, we're going to keep the classification for forms where it's needed for things like the Bumi Putra privileges and whatnot. And I actually don't have that much against the Bumi Putra privileges. Unlike a lot of people, I support Article 153, and I've grown less sensitive to things like Keturunan Melayu lah. But at the same time, all these things, it's hard to take it seriously if it's just a couple of cosmetic changes, like getting rid of race on some forms, because in the end, there's got to be some considered campaign to change people's mindsets lah about how we approach race, how we approach the concept of nationhood. Like there was this great Bangsa Malaysia thing which Dr. Mahathir did, and now we're supplanting it with One Malaysia. I don't really see the difference, but I mean Bangsa Malaysia was a good idea. Like people said, what's this Malaysian race? But Bangsa is nation. That's why the United Nations in Malay is Persatuan Bangsa Bangsa Bersatu. So I mean a Malaysian nation is a great idea. And then now instead we want this One Malaysia, so we're getting rid of race on the forms, and I think that's actually rather silly.
Yeah, but what do you think about, like, because it's actually a social thing, but a lot of people perceive it as a political thing. How is it that when we're talking about nation building, we separate partisanship from this effort to build the country together? What are your thoughts on that?
Separating partisanship as in you mean putting aside political differences to celebrate commonness as Malaysians, right? Well, I think that's absolutely great. Actually, just this past weekend, I met with this really fantastic guy the young guy from UMNO, Wan Firdaus, and he had a lot of great things to say about Malaysia. And I mean, I'd love to see more guys like him in the establishment, in UMNO and in MCA, in everywhere. My sympathies are kind of with the opposition, but I have no problem like working with the government. And I went to Parliament last year, and it was a real revelation. I saw the MPs all hang out together, waving to each other, even though you might see them on TV yelling at each other, fighting like hell. And yet they're at the cafe, like shaking hands, laughing, joking. And I realized, that's the kind of spirit we need to have as Malaysians. And it's very surprising that Malaysians can be so uptight about our differences, whether they be political, racial, religious, and yet our leaders, they don't have any problems with it, even though they're the ones stirring up these differences. And so I think, again, it goes back to the issue of mindsets. Politicians need to be more conscious about how they are affecting our mindsets in what they say in public, in parliament, and what they're telling us indirectly through their policies.
What do you think politicians are saying, and how do you think politicians today are affecting the mindset of the large group of young Malaysians who are now beginning to understand the role they have at the ballot box?
As in,
like, do you think that for example, we had this conversation earlier about how for example the opposition has a lot of younger politicians, and that says something.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
And when we tried to see, okay, how many young politicians are there in Barisan Nasional, and we were like struggling, scratching our heads.
Yeah.
So do you think something like that, even something like that, representation, does it in some sense, some way, sway the opinion of young Malaysians?
Yeah, to be sure. Like, I mean, you have politicians like Hannah Yeoh who might not seem that charismatic actually. Like I have some young friends who are like, what's the big deal about Hannah Yeoh? But then the fact
what do you mean, what's the big deal?
but the fact is that the reason that they have so much following is because they are young, because people our age can relate to them. They're because as a generation, it's just the fact that they have a different mindset lah. And that's also why Barisan, I think, is losing the youth vote, losing popularity among Malaysians as a whole, because the most Malaysians are young, and Barisan, you look at their leadership ranks, it's full of people who are balding, full of people who are from an older generation lah. And I mean, I don't blame them for having a particular mindset. I mean, I've heard from the mouths of young UMNO politicians like Khairi Jamaluddin himself that you have to understand these are people from a certain mindset in independence era or just after that, or May 13, and they've been horribly shaken to the core by these events, and it's really shaped their worldview, and I understand that. But at the same time, there are many Malaysians like myself, like yourself. We are young, and we have just a different approach to what Malaysia should be, what one Malaysia is. And so it's very difficult for us to get along with Barisan, to work with them as a government if they don't see eye to eye with us. And the fact that the government is filled with politicians and civil servants who are from this older generation, they can't work with us. So it's quite difficult.
Okay, let's talk about young people. How do you think young Malaysians can participate? A recent article that you had written, which drew some flag, said that, for example, young Malaysians are, you used the word apathetic, right? And for which you drew some negative comments lah. So how do you feel that young Malaysians can participate more in society, and how is it that we can take charge of Malaysia beyond just letting politicians run the show?
Yeah, so I think there's a huge dichotomy lah. On the one hand, you have a lot of people I know who are really into the activism scene. They go to all these rallies, they go to all these ceramas. They are there on nomination day, and like with this Pematang Pasir, all these things, really involved. And on the other hand, you have people who just they go to the mamak, they go to the kopitiam, and then they talk. And then that's that. And I think these guys, they're both usually equally enthusiastic and almost equally aware about what's going on. But it's just that there's this one group who have really somehow taken the initiative to get involved. And there's this other group who has no idea where to start with getting involved. And it's also very difficult because these groups don't see eye to eye. Like the hardcore activists will say, why aren't you guys coming out to the rallies with us? And some of these people, they're not cut out for that sort of thing. I think you can't expect everyone to be going out.
So how can the people who don't want to go out for that? How do you, in your opinion, how can they participate in Malaysian civil society?
Yeah, so I think I was at the Malaysian Student Leaders Summit, and Datuk Kadir Jassin was there on the same panel as me, speaking about civil society. And he said, a civil society is a free society. You need to be free to voice your views, to organize, so that we can build common causes together lah. And so I think that's basically how you get involved is you start raising your voice. You go beyond talking to your friends. You might go online, you might get involved in commenting on blogs. This is actually how I got started in all my writing things. I actually started commenting on blogs.
That's right.
Yeah, so you start commenting on blogs, then you might write to the newspaper. Like when I was young, I actually wrote into like the New Straits Times at the start. I never got published, but from that age I was already starting. I wrote into Malaysia Kini. So that's one way you can start raising your voice there. And some young people, law students, actually have started this campaign to revise the CLP, the Certificate of Legal Practice, which makes it really hard for young foreign educated lawyers to come back and work here. So what they did was they wrote in to the Star every day. One of them would write in a letter of their own to the Star. So they organized a letter writing campaign. And these might seem like small things, but they can make a huge difference. And even if you're not politically inclined, there are things you can do. Right.
So talking about not being politically inclined and doing something ourselves, a very small measure. John, would you care to help me make a change to the Fairly Current Show, actually to this logo? Because as you can see, can you help me pull it down?
Yes.
You see here. As you can see, yang ni dia dah nak pecah dah tau, tengok. And now, look at the back. This is the reality. Kesian. So, here we have a new one that John will help me to put up. John, help me. Yeah, here we go. A brand new sign. Dun, 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 dun. I don't think it can stick yet. Okay, just hold it there, John. Okay. Yeah, just hold it there. So, thank you for coming on the show.
Yep, no problem.
And here's to making Malaysia better.
Yes,
thank you.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
The unwelcome word of the week is scandal. Scandal. A sex partner with whom you have no emotional bond. He was driving back with his scandal when they were overtaken by a bunch of Samsung Rempit types.